Chapter 16. You know, once we get on that plane, we'll have to pretend this never happened. NEGIRE took 2 steps away from him, bounced and smiled at him, though that smile didn't quite reach her eyes. So I hope you're ready, sensei. Izuku groaned, his alarm clock blaring at him as he woke up in his apartment. He had expected to see NEGIRE there, curled up in his arms and smiling at him as she had woken up first. Her long blue hair wrapped around his arms before she woke him up with a soft tender kiss, promising him a bright and wonderful day. Instead, he woke up alone, the late August heat already invading his apartment this early in the morning. Another scorching hot day. Thankfully UA had advanced AC installed that made them forget how hot it was outside. It didn't do a lot during quirk training. Maybe he should just make Shoto stand next to him or something. Groaning, he sat up and held back a yawn while checking his phone. No new messages. Things really were back to how they were. He didn't really miss Island before their visit, but now he was missing it badly, if only to have NEGIRE there with him. That week he had spent with her had been something else. It flew by before he even knew it, and now time seemed to drag on as he waited for her to graduate. She was right, it was hard to go back to the way things were before then. Really hard. He just couldn't see her as a student anymore, she had made sure of that. So, now he had to pretend that nothing happened over their trip to Island. It was easier said than done. Once fully dressed, he made his way to UA. Somehow enduring the summer heat along the way. Most of his students looked to be suffering just as much as he was on his way back to campus. Standing in front of the campus he smiled, enjoying the buzz of the place. He wasn't late for once, so at least he had that going for him. Now to have another day full of teaching future students and developing quirks, such as teaching Shoto how to just make a blast of frigid wind to cool the whole class down. Good morning, Izuku-sensei. A chill ran down his spine as NEGIRE skipped past him. She looked happy, like she wasn't struggling at all to forget about what happened. I'll see you in class later. Hey, NEGIRE, wait. Yu ran up panting. She stopped right beside him. Her hair looked like the sky at sunset, ranging from purple to orange. This is your fault, Izuku-sensei. You just had to turn her into a stamina freak for her quirk. Sorry, Yu. I just did what would help her become a great hero the most. He laughed with her. Besides, that's just part of what makes NEGIRE so cute, isn't it? She's just a non-stop ball of energy. Yeah, I guess you're right. Still, she's harder to keep up with now. See you later, Izuku-sensei. Yu ran off, chasing after NEGIRE. The two laughing as they entered the building. Seeing NEGIRE always put a smile on his face. Hell, seeing any of his students did that. But it was easy to forget about everything when he was with her. It was like nothing even mattered. Part of him was worried that she was trying to avoid him, but really she was just acting like nothing had changed between them. It was impressive, really. He wanted to know her thoughts and feelings whenever they crossed paths. Oh my, Nemuri Kayama, the pro hero known as the 18+ only hero, Midnight, laughed as she walked up behind him, her high-heeled boots giving her the extra inch to loom over him. She was dressed in her usual skin-tight suit that was just as obscene as it was questionable. Seriously, but considering how 3 of the other pro hero teachers walked around shirtless, she wasn't the worst offender. Just the sexiest. You have that look in your eyes, Midoriya-sensei. The hair on the back of his neck stood on edge when she purred his name. He had been subject to her teasing since he was first taken on as a teacher, and once NEGIRE had made her feelings known to him, they had less of an effect. But she could still get to him easily. Oh, good morning, Kayama-sensei, and what look would that be? She smiled and let out a sigh, and wiggled about before resting her arm on his shoulder, pulling him into a hug. Casual, meaningless displays of affection were Nemuri's game. The look of young love, my young sensei. The question is, which one of our young students has captured your heart? Crap. How did she find out? What was she going to do? This was it. This was how he lost his job, wasn't it? His class was already questionable, but if word got out that he was in a relationship with NEGIRE, then there was no way that he'd be allowed to stay on. He'd have to go back to Island, which really wouldn't be that bad, but he wanted to teach. I don't know what you're talking about, Kayama-sensei. I was just, it's NEGIRE, isn't it? You two are rather close after all. You really should see how you smile at her. It almost makes me jealous. Were they really going to have this conversation in public? Right in front of the school gates? She's just one of my Izuku. Really, you need to relax. You're like what, 3 years older than her? That's nothing. My last boyfriend was younger than you, and he was a former student. Nemuri let her hand slide down his back and she winked at him. You two would make a cute couple, just make sure you hold off until she graduates. Sensei. His eyes were torn from Nemuri's gleeful glare to see NEGIRE flying towards him at top speed. Oh my, I made her jealous, Nemuri teased, shaking his shoulder as she took a step back. Sensei sensei sensei. NEGIRE laughed, flying around him like a hummingbird inspecting a flower before she slowed down enough to land. Can you supervise us at the pool tomorrow? We need permission to do water training, but really we just want to have fun at the pool and it's going to be so hot tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow was Saturday. Why are you asking me? Because I know you'll say yes, and you'll only make us work a little bit before we can just relax and enjoy the pool. He tried to ignore Nemuri's laughter. If you fill out the request form and put it on my desk, I'll supervise it. But I do expect some actual swimming practice. I know, thanks sensei. I'll go get you to put your name on the form. NEGIRE laughed, flew around him and then sped off towards the building. Oh my, she certainly has you wrapped around her finger, doesn't she? Nemuri laughed. You know, if you need backup tomorrow I could show up. That way you'd have something more appropriate to ogle. Are you flirting with me or is that just a part of your personality? I wonder, she sighed, pushing her long black hair back behind her back and strutted towards the building. We'll talk later, Izuku. XXXX incoming. Mirio shouted as he leaped nearly a foot out of the water and then spiked down the volleyball onto the other side of the net, and right into his face. Izuku twirled as water, air, the ball, and a bit of his own blood splattered about him. He blinked, the chlorinated water stinging just a bit as he looked at the legs of some of his students before swimming back up. His nose hurt a lot. Why on earth was he playing water sports with future heroes? Sensei? Sorry. He heard Mirio shout. I didn't mean to hit you in the face. Shaking his head, he bounced one foot on the bottom of the pool and touched his nose. He looked at his fingers. Yep, that is blood. It's fine, Mirio, but I think that's my cue to take a break and let you guys have your fun. You heard the man, Nemuri shouted from the dry safe land next to the pool. Her bathing suit was tasteful in that it was a one-piece and only showed off a bit of her cleavage. It wasn't even the most revealing one at the pool. NEGIRE, be a dear and assist Izuku-sensei with the first aid kit, and let's move on to the next round. The game's all tied up after all. Before he could protest, NEGIRE darted under the water using her quirk as deftly as she could on land to swim around and appear next to him. The title of most revealing outfit belonged to NEGIRE, who was wearing a very tasteful white bikini that showed off her curves and reminded him of the time they had spent on Island. It was the same bikini he had taken off of her at least twice, once in the hot tub. Come on sensei, let's go make sure your nose isn't broken. NEGIRE smiled at him and grabbed his arm, easily pushing both of them through the water with her quirk until they arrived at the steps. He looked towards Nemuri, who was smiling at him and even winked. He wasn't sure if she was an ally or if she was just using him to have fun. Probably both. I'm fine, NEGIRE, you can keep dash. She pinched his arm. Come on Izuku, we can talk for a bit. That got him to be silent. She didn't call him sensei. What did that mean? He allowed NEGIRE to lead him to a benched shaded area where the first aid kit was located. They were still in view of the pool, but chances are no one would be able to hear them, so it should be fine. He watched her crack open the case and pull out a cloth to wipe away his blood. She was careful and diligent in her treatment of him. So, what was it you wanted to talk about? He asked, despite the blood still dripping from his nose. Stuff, NEGIRE hummed. Her smile was soft and full of delight. Mostly about how I missed you. It's a lot harder for me than I thought it would be. Is it wrong that makes me happy? Only if it's wrong that makes me happy. She stuck out her tongue as she applied some kind of paste to his nose as the blood came to a stop. Then the bandage. But really it's so frustrating when I see you and you do something that makes me want to kiss you or hold your hand. Oh, what do I do that makes you do that? I can stop. It only really happens you're being you. NEGIRE smiled, pressing the band-aid across his nose. She closed the first aid kit and pushed it to the side. And I don't want you to stop being you. So I'll just have to learn to deal with it. Oh, well thanks. So NEGIRE was suffering just as much as he was. That was good. Or bad. Hard to really gauge these things. So don't make it harder by flirting with Kayama-sensei, or anybody else. She huffed, crossing her arms over her chest and pouting. I get jealous and it's frustrating. That's just Kayama-sensei though, she'd flirt with her own reflection. And you don't have to worry about her, I think she's rooting for us. Negire gasped, turning to look towards him, fear going through her eyes. She knows. Not really, she said that we'd make a cute couple and that I should wait to try anything until after you graduate. Which is the plan. Or they could just end up somewhere private. That'd be nice. Apparently she's dated several former students of hers. Oh, good to know you won't get fired when we start dating when I finally graduate. Negire smiled, moving her hand over to his, and letting her pinky rest over his pinky. It wasn't much, but for right now, it would do. 3 more months. She could do 3 more months easy. It was like as easy as flying. Simple easy, and Negire huffed, pressing her face into her pillow and kicking her legs again. She wanted to do stuff with Izuku, like hold his hand and kiss him, and just spend alone time with him or something. She spun and flopped onto her back, bouncing like a fish out of water. It was cold. She wanted Izuku to cuddle with her and make her feel warm. How had they managed to hold back so far? According to Yu, it was a miracle that they both hadn't lost interest. She knew Izuku hadn't, not with the way he looked at her. Those subtle glances he gave her whenever he thought no one else was looking, those wonderful smiles that were just for her. Winter vacation had just begun and her train ride to see her parents wasn't until tomorrow. Maybe Izuku wasn't doing anything, and she could just show up. There wasn't anything wrong with a student showing up to wish her teacher a Merry Christmas, was there? But she'd have to bring him a gift or something, right? Why didn't she have a gift for him already? Oh right, trying not to look like they were a couple, and she didn't give him a gift last year. But he didn't get her a gift either, so it was fine. Besides, she just wanted to see him. I'm going to do it. She sat up and then rolled forward, grabbing her phone off the charger, and then bouncing out the door. Then back in to grab her jacket. It was way too cold. Her jacket was a cute red one that had white fluffy bits on it and was really warm. Yu had picked it out for her. She looked like a young Santa's helper. As she half walked, half floated out of the complex, she stopped by her mailbox, checking it for idle curiosity. A plain white envelope that was addressed to her in Izuku's handwriting sat there all alone. Did he send her something? By mail? That was like prehistoric old school. Oh, if I send him mail we can be like secret penpal lovers. Opening it, she saw that it held a single piece of paper and a necklace. The necklace was a silver chain that held a small deep blue gem that looked like it was a star. Was it real? Was it glass? Plastic? Why'd he give it to her? Why? With the necklace still wrapped in her hand, she unfolded the paper and read it to herself. Negire, I know it's not much, but I wanted to give this to you as a thank you for just making my life brighter. I hope that this can make your Christmas just the smallest bit brighter. I'll be cheering you on, watching as you fly to new heights and shine brightly. I hope the next piece of jewelry I give you is a ring. Signed, I am. The words hit her after a moment, her heart going crazy as she let that last sentence really sink in. A ring? Now? When? When she graduated. A ring? Or a ring that meant something more? Was it a promise ring? Marriage ring? Was that too fast? That was way too fast, right? No, it wasn't. They'd been dating for months now. Sure, it was a little fast, but it was fine, and she'd like Izuku for over a year now, so it was fine for her to think that it was okay. But what was he thinking? She stood there shaking as her cheeks felt warm against the cold winter air. There was no doubt that she was blushing up a storm, and she probably had some goofy-looking smile on her face. With a huff, she pushed the letter into her pocket and marched right back up to her apartment. That jerk? Giving me something like that when I can't even repay him properly. She was going to go buy him a present, and then shower him in kisses? A lot of kisses? So many kisses it would make up for the past few months and then some. All the kisses? XXXX. She didn't call him ahead of time. She probably should have, just to make sure that he was home. He did say that he was just going to be staying home during the holidays and that he wouldn't be doing much, besides missing her, so it was fine to show up at his apartment unannounced. Tapping on his door, she swung her arms back and forth, patiently waiting for him. When the door opened, instead of a messy green-haired Izuku who was probably in the middle of eating ramen and looking halfway like a bum, a green-haired woman that was shorter than her looked at her with a confused expression. Hello, can I help you? The woman asked in a calm, yet confused voice. Ah, is Izuku here? she asked, pushing back a couple strands of her hair and smiling. What should she say? That she was his girlfriend? His student? His basically unofficial fiancé with that stupid letter that she was still blushing and smiling about? I'm a Desho. You must be Negire. Melissa told me so much about you. I can't believe my son kept you a secret from me, but he's always been rather quiet about things like that. The woman grabbed her hand and smiled. I'm Inko, Izuku's mother. Please come in. We were just about to have dinner. Why don't you join us? Before she could protest, Izuku's mother dragged him into his apartment. It looked cleaner than the last time she had been in here. Not that Izuku was a slob, at least not by her standards, but there wasn't the usual chaos. I've been bugging my son to introduce you to me since this morning, but he's been so reluctant. Inko hummed as she led her into the very well-organized living room, and standing in the kitchen that joined that room was a red-faced Izuku, currently stirring a bowl of something. Oh, hiya, Negire, he said with his face red. I see you met my mother. She decided to come stay with me for a few days just so that she could meet you. Of course I did. Inko smiled, waving her hand at Izuku. I wouldn't give up a chance to meet my potential future daughter. Besides, your father was busy with work, so I didn't want to spend Christmas alone. Now tell me, Negire, are you going to be spending Christmas with my Izuku? No, I mean, I'd like to, but I'm leaving tomorrow to go spend it with my parents. Ideally she'd be spending her holiday with Izuku up at some place where they could have a lot of privacy, that nobody knew who they were and wouldn't mind them doing couple things. I really just came here to give him my gift and to kiss him, silly. But meeting his mother was fine too. Wait. This was Izuku's mom. And she knew that they were dating. Oh, your name's Inko, right? Do you have a quirk? Does your husband have curly hair? Izuku's hair is really curly, but yours is pretty straight. Oh, what do you do? Why do you live in the States? What state do you live in? Do you like flying? Oh, what's your favorite tea? Do you like hot chocolate? Oh my, Inko laughed, swatting her hands at the questions like they were flies. She gave a soft laugh and looked towards her son. You weren't kidding when you said she asked a lot of questions, dear. Yeah, Izuku laughed from the kitchen, placing down the bowl he was stirring, and walked out to greet them. She just likes to know things. It's one of the reasons why I like her so much. Admitting that to her was one thing, but in front of his own mother, she froze. Whatever question was halfway to her mouth froze, causing all others to crash in her mind. Her face turned red. Izuku, what? You do? He walked over to her. His face looked as red as hers felt. But just looking at him made that seem to not matter. I know, but you didn't have to tell your mom about it. She crossed her arms, pouting. She still really wanted to kiss him. Oh my, Melissa really didn't do you justice when she said how cute you were. But she was right with how happy you make my Izuku. Inko sat down at the kotetsu that was the centerpiece of the living area and buried her hands under the blanket. Come now, join me for a bit, and Izuku, why don't you bring us some tea? Sure. Before he walked away, Izuku squeezed her shoulder and smiled at her as though she was about to head off on some dangerous mission. I guess you want me to finish up dinner, too? Yes please, thank you dear. Inko smiled. Negire sat across from her, thankful for the warmth coming out from the kotetsu, and smiled at the small woman. She was really cute in a motherly way, and she reminded her of her own mother, although a bit less bubbly. Now then, Negire dear, I'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind. Not at all, Mrs. Midoriya. I'm really glad to have met you. Likewise. Now then, the room grew 10 degrees colder as Inko's smile vanished. Can you please explain to me how you managed corrupting my Izuku so that he'd think dating one of his students was a good idea? Mom. Hush, you think I didn't know? Your father and I both watched the sports festival. She came in second right next to that boy Melissa likes. Inko shot a glare at her son that sent a shiver down her spine. But I wasn't asking you, I was asking her. Somehow, this small kind-looking woman was 100 times scarier than the biggest villain she had ever faced off against. And like twice as scary as Ryoku. She swallowed. So much for kissing Izuku and not getting caught. She bowed her head, nearly reaching the table. Please don't tell anyone. I'll stop seeing him. I don't want Izuku to lose his job. I'm not going to tell anyone, nor do I want you to stop seeing him. I can tell that you make him happy and that he thinks the world of you. Inko folded her hands in front of her face, waves of pure menace pouring out of her despite the kind words. I just wish to understand. Well, that was good. I sort of started to like Izuku over a year ago. It wasn't really any one thing, and it had nothing to do with him being my teacher. Well, not exactly. I realized I just liked talking to him, and I thought he was cute, and then I kind of started to get feelings for him. A few months later I told him my feelings. She took a breath and calmed herself. Why was answering this question so hard? He was reluctant and said that we couldn't because he was my teacher. I told him I was going to wait until I graduated to do anything with him, but that I'd spend the whole year trying to make him fall in love with me. She gave a hollow laugh and ran a hand through her hair. I guess it worked a little too well because, by the time we went to Island, I had a feeling he liked me and I didn't want to wait anymore, so I told him that while we were on the island, I wasn't his student. And we kind of started dating then. She held up both hands in front of her face and waved them defensively. But we haven't done anything since we got back. I don't want Izuku to lose his job. He's a great teacher, and I know I shouldn't be spending time with him like this, but I love him. A pair of arms wrapped around her and she found Izuku hugging her from behind. Negire. Inko took a sip of tea. When did that get there? And then smiled. If that's the case, then I have no choice but to accept. Now then, why don't you tell me more about yourself, Negire? That was a close one. Maybe they should have been a bit more careful. It was official. She was now a full-grade pro hero, with a diploma, and that meant that she could do so many things, like solo work, join on full-time with an agency, abuse the fact that she can fly by saying she's on patrol, and any number of things that were related to being a hero. And while all those things were absolutely fantastic, she was far more excited about what the diploma meant. She was no longer a student at UA. She was a graduate, which meant she was no longer a student of Izuku. Now she could date him in public and do a bunch of other couple stuff, like hold hands, cuddle, go to the movies, kiss, maybe even sleep in the same bed. Negire gasped, spinning in the air as she held on to her diploma, trying really hard not to break out into a fit of giggles. She hadn't let go of it since she had gotten it last night at the graduation ceremony. She had wanted to immediately rush over to Izuku the moment she got it, but that would be almost as bad as kissing him a month ago at school. No, she had to wait, and do it when he wasn't at work. Which he wasn't right now because it was spring break and she was going to ambush him at his apartment and do something couple-related, like just cuddling and holding hands. Now that they had all the time in the world to be a couple, she wasn't going to rush anything like she did when they were at Island. Probably, she might just be so excited to see him that she latches onto him, and then oops, he's shirtless. Floating down in front of Izuku's door, she knocked on it and hummed, waiting for him to answer the door. No such luck. She had the right apartment number, didn't she? Where was he? Was he out drinking with Sir again? Or maybe he was just getting groceries. She should have told him she was coming over. Darn it. So much for a surprise. She pulled out her phone and called him. 2 rings and he picked up. Oh, hey Negire. Babe? Sweetie? What should I call you now? Rolling her eyes, she smiled and moved over to the railing that separated his 3rd-floor apartment from a drop to the small courtyard down below. I'm at your apartment. Wondering where you are? I want to show you my diploma and kiss and stuff. Oh? You wanted to do that today? Sorry, I thought I had a bit more time before you wanted to come over. I wanted to surprise you, but I moved into a new apartment. Izuku laughed from over the phone. It's a bit bigger and a lot nicer. What? Why'd you move out of your old place? She turned and looked at the building. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't really the worst either. It was just cheap. Besides the fact that it was smaller than mine and a dump. Well, I was just thinking that we'll probably be spending a lot more time together, and my lease was up, and well, why don't you just come over? I think you'll like it. He sounded cute from the way he was mumbling about it. Sure, text me the address and I'll fly over. Sure. Talk to you soon. Yep. See ya. Okay, texting the address as soon as we hang up. Dork. She hung up, sticking her tongue out, and waited for the message. A couple of seconds later and she received the text from Izuku, her phone showing the location on the map with a flick of her finger. In half a heartbeat she was flying towards Izuku's new apartment. If only there was a map app that was for people that could fly. His new apartment was a bit further away from UA, but with trains, it might be a shorter commute. When she saw the area she couldn't help but smile. It wasn't extravagant by any means, but it was nice. She saw Izuku standing in front of his apartment on the top floor. Now all she had to do was resist the urge to fly in and kiss him. Wait. They could do that now. She spun in, just slowing down enough so that when she collided with him he could catch her. Their lips met as her legs wrapped around his waist while she grabbed onto his back. Izuku responded instantly, even as he stumbled back for a moment. So much for taking things slow. They parted, laughing at the energy of that kiss, her feet falling to the ground while she held on to his shoulders. I might have been waiting a long time to do that. Me too, Izuku laughed, hands still on her waist. I was getting really worried we might slip up towards the end. So, what was the real reason why you decided to get a new apartment? She asked, moving a hand to grab his. They didn't have to hide anymore. Not now, not ever again. Izuku smiled and opened the door for her. A few boxes sat in the modest living/dining room fusion that was comfortably spacious, and his tiny TV looked all but microscopic against the wall. But it was nice. Just a bit much for one person. Well, since we'll be spending a lot of time together, I figured that we could use some more space. He paused and gestured towards the inside. And I was kind of hoping that you'd maybe be staying here with me. She gasped and swatted him on the chest, smiling at the thought. Izuku, we don't have to rush. We can let this relationship progress naturally. So let's take it slow and really get to know each other. I didn't mean to rush, I'm just really happy to start spending time with you. He almost looked like a kicked puppy. An adorable smart, green-haired puppy that was really good at kissing, cuddling, and sex. Well hey, why don't we go on a date? We can go eat somewhere and just do date stuff. Oh, that's a good idea. She leaned up to kiss him one more time. Or we can go a break in your new bedroom. Actually, it'll be the first time in your bed period. But I think a nice day, relaxing inside, making out a lot, and probably being naked is exactly the kind of date we need. What happened to taking things slow? Izuku asked before pressing into her and kissing her along the neck. We'll take things as they come. NEGIRE moved in 3 weeks later when she discovered that she no longer got student rates at her old apartment. 3 years. Chapter 16 Chapter 16 once we get on that plane, we'll have to pretend this never happened. NEGIRE took 2 steps away from him, bounced and smiled at him, though that smile didn't quite reach her eyes. So I hope you're ready, sensei. Izuku groaned, his alarm clock blaring at him as he woke up in his apartment. He had expected to see NEGIRE there, curled up in his arms and smiling at him as she had woken up first. Her long blue hair wrapped around his arms before she woke him up with a soft tender kiss, promising him a bright and wonderful day. Instead, he woke up alone. The late August heat already invading his apartment this early in the morning. Another scorching hot day. Thankfully UA had advanced AC installed that made them forget how hot it was outside. It didn't do a lot during quirk training. Maybe he should just make Shoto stand next to him or something. Groaning, he sat up and held back a yawn while checking his phone. No new messages. Things really were back to how they were. He didn't really miss Island before their visit, but now he was missing it badly, if only to have NEGIRE there with him. That week he had spent with her had been something else. It flew by before he even knew it, and now time seemed to drag on as he waited for her to graduate. She was right, it was hard to go back to the way things were before then. Really hard. He just couldn't see her as a student anymore, she had made sure of that. So, now he had to pretend that nothing happened over their trip to Island. It was easier said than done. Once fully dressed, he made his way to UA. Somehow enduring the summer heat along the way. Most of his students looked to be suffering just as much as he was on his way back to campus. Standing in front of the campus he smiled, enjoying the buzz of the place. He wasn't late for once, so at least he had that going for him. Now to have another day full of teaching future students and developing quirks, such as teaching Shoto how to just make a blast of frigid wind to cool the whole class down. Good morning, Izuku-sensei. A chill ran down his spine as NEGIRE skipped past him. She looked happy, like she wasn't struggling at all to forget about what happened. I'll see you in class later. Hey, NEGIRE, wait. Yu ran up panting. She stopped right beside him. Her hair looked like the sky at sunset, ranging from purple to orange. This is your fault, Izuku-sensei. You just had to turn her into a stamina freak for her quirk. Sorry, Yu. I just did what would help her become a great hero the most. He laughed with her. Besides, that's just part of what makes NEGIRE so cute, isn't it? She's just a non-stop ball of energy. Yeah, I guess you're right. Still, she's harder to keep up with now. See you later, Izuku-sensei. Yu ran off, chasing after NEGIRE. The two laughing as they entered the building. Seeing NEGIRE always put a smile on his face, hell, seeing any of his students did that. But it was easy to forget about everything when he was with her. It was like nothing even mattered. Part of him was worried that she was trying to avoid him, but really she was just acting like nothing had changed between them. It was impressive, really. He wanted to know her thoughts and feelings whenever they crossed paths. Oh my, Nemuri Kayama, the pro hero known as the 18+ only hero, Midnight, laughed as she walked up behind him, her high-heeled boots giving her the extra inch to loom over him. She was dressed in her usual skin-tight suit that was just as obscene as it was questionable. Seriously, but considering how 3 of the other pro hero teachers walked around shirtless, she wasn't the worst offender. Just the sexiest. You have that look in your eyes, Midoriya-sensei. The hair on the back of his neck stood on edge when she purred his name. He had been subject to her teasing since he was first